Hey everyone, Ron Newcomb here, the Indie Coach. I'm here with my buddy Caleb Meurer, probably my oldest friend. We go way back to when I was probably, let's see, 5 years old and just
Yep.
moved to Woodbridge, Virginia. And his mom babysat us, and we lived down the street. And so he has several brothers, several sisters. So I was always at their house, and they kind of had an open door policy for me that I could just come down there and be part of the family. So I took advantage of it and went down there. And it was actually through they had a babysitter one night. I don't know if you remember this, Caleb, but you guys had a babysitter one night, and I was probably around 7 or 8, I had to guess. And he played Dungeons and Dragons. That was the first time D&D came out and was a thing. And we all sat around the table and played. And of course, I was immediately hooked. And what I was hooked on, I didn't realize at the time, but looking back on it, was the power of story. It was story
Yeah.
that captivated me and story that pulled me in. And it was this communal collective story, which is something I think role-playing games and D&D in particular does extremely well. And next thing you know, for years to come, we were, knights and rangers and wizards. And, by the way, we secretly were these things. At school, we were really cool. And we were jocks and played sports. And, we didn't let people know too much that we were the D&D guys on the weekends, but secretly that is what we were. And then you also have a very artistic family, from actors to artists to singers. Your mom certainly is a performer and always did community theater. And it was through your family's love of theater that I too began to see and created a love of acting. Was probably through your family's influence on my life. And that led me, when I turned 18, to really zealously pursue acting. But you went a little bit of a different path. And so I would love to hear from you about kind of your pathway of how you got into the business and what got you into wanting telling the stories.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on the two main topics for me. If I look back, the things that kind of like got me on my path, uh, definitely the theater thing. My mom was always doing theater, and we were involved in community theater and that kind of thing. Even dinner, we did some dinner theater. Like our first paid gigs in our life were we're doing these dinner theater productions. We'd make like $10 a show and be up way later on a school night than we should have been. But that was a big one. And then Dungeons and Dragons too. Like it's so funny because I say the same thing about that. Like I didn't even realize that it was a storytelling game. I thought it was about rules and math and battle or something like that. And I didn't realize that, like, oh, when I started playing as an adult with my brother and his boys and my son as well, like we started playing. I guess it was around, man, it was probably close to 10 years ago. And it was a few years after fifth edition of Dungeons and Dragons came out. I was like, very was, getting very popular. And I was like, all right, I got to try this again. And so I had never even dungeon mastered before. And so I jumped in, and then I realized, like, oh, I never understood what this game was as a kid. Like, this is about storytelling. And that led to like a whole different way of playing that was way more fun than the battling and that whole game style play of like min-maxing your character or something like that. Like I have no interest in any of that anymore. Like I'm all into just the role playing and just having fun and creating stories together. And so those are the two main things I think that kind of steered me into the storytelling. And I didn't even realize that it was storytelling that was the main thing that kind of tied all these things that I was interested in together. Because I was musical when I came out of high school. I had all these different things I wanted to do. Like I was drawn to theater. I was always drawing, and so I thought maybe I liked storybooks. I thought maybe I'd be like a children's book author and illustrator, and then just acting as well, theater, music. Those are like the main things. But then after I did some theater kind of in my early 20s. I was pretty aimless. My parents didn't have any money and nobody was paying attention to me. So I was just sort of like set loose in the world. I did summer theater a couple of years in my early 20s in Yellowstone, and then I ended up in LA as a roommate with somebody who was doing Reed. You know Reed.
Yeah.
Reed invited me to LA to just be his roommate because he knew I was just going to go back and live with my mom again. So I ended up in LA, and then that was when I discovered that you could major in animation. It was like I remember reading an article in the LA Times, and I mean at the time I had moved to LA. I thought like, maybe I'll be an actor. I don't know. I had no idea what I was doing. I was waiting tables. I was working at a bank. I was doing a little bit of graphic design for like a friend who was a freelancer. She was teaching me a bunch of stuff, and I had nothing going on. I did some auditions in LA for commercials and things, and I think like 3 auditions in, I was like, this is not going to work for me. Like this is just not for me at all. It was such a terror. I mean, I'm sure you could talk about that as well, but just the experience of like feeling just like, I don't know, that's a whole different conversation. But anyway, I read this article about how you could major in animation. And so when it was this combination of the drawing and the acting together, like it was like a lightning bolt for me. It was like, that's it. That's the thing that I've been looking for. And
Yeah.
so then I ended up in anime. That's kind of like the idea that I had all these things I was interested in, and then 2 of the big ones could be combined into this one thing. And so then that's how I got into animation, and was pulled into that. But I didn't realize even then that I was a storyteller. I mean, it's funny. So I teach now as well. So
Hmm.
and I teach a storyboarding class, but I teach a lot of storytelling in the class as well. All kinds of hero's journey and story structure and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but that's the part of it that I get more interested in over the year, like as the years go on, like that aspect of it, the storytelling aspect, and just
Yeah.
how story infuses just everything we do as human beings.
Yeah.
It's like all the arts. I mean, I had this conversation with just social media, like are all the arts storytelling? And I don't really have a strong opinion about it. I'm not like trying to impose my will on anybody, but I think you can make a good argument that at least most of the arts are storytelling, at least to some degree. Even things like architecture and fashion design,
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
down to storytelling. So, and just that idea, like what is storytelling? Where does it come from? And why is it such a
Yeah.
big deal to us? And so I, try to get my students interested in that. So, but
Yeah, no,
anyways,
no, funny. It's storytelling. So I went from calling myself a filmmaker, and within the last 2 years, I started calling myself a storyteller because I realized there's so many mediums I want to play in, from
yeah,
role-playing games to board games to card games. I mean, I had all these
yeah,
aspirations.
comics, yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, comics I've done now, miniatures. And so I had all these aspirations, and I realized story was the centerpiece. And
yep,
certainly Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces, and so many people, Michael Haig. I'm currently reading a guy that named Chris Fox, who talks about, he's really about a perspective from authors, but literally the chapter I just read while I was at the gym was all about, the 3 act structure and story, and why story and myth in particular, I mean, it really did create us as like a species, even.
yeah,
It really did, because it's one of the differentiating factors, because suddenly we learned like, oh geez, if you do this, that'll burn your hut down. And then that went around
right,
to all the villages, like, don't
right,
do that. Or if you're bad, these things will happen. And suddenly
yeah,
that, went all throughout. And I find as I get a little older too, story is the thing that I'm drawn to, and I'm fascinated about what makes that story. And then, when you kind of feel like you start to figure it out, somebody comes out of left field and does something completely different. It kind of breaks the mold, and you're like, holy cow, I mean, blown away in a cool way about story. And then, it leads you down a different road. A
yeah,
little bit of your resume. So yeah, I definitely remember, this is pre-internet, right? You and I had you guys had moved. We had kind of lost track. Then I was able to kind of track you guys down.
yeah,
And you were living in LA at the time, and you were moving out. And so Reed had an open room, and you were
yeah,
like, I was kind of talking about, yeah, I've always want to come to LA. I was out of the Marine Corps, wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do, really wanted to try acting. So Caleb was like, dude, you should come out. And so that's what I did. Move out there. And I took Caleb's room. When he left, I moved in. And it was exactly just as hard as you said, going to all these auditions. There's 100 people that look like you, talk like
Right.
you, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be insane. And I was even struggling to get like free work. It was like
Yeah.
a student project. There would be a
Right.
hundred people show up. And you're like, oh my gosh, the competition was just insane. But
Yeah.
you did find traction in animation. Tell me a little bit of the history of the process of animation and how you
Yeah.
got there, and what got you to where you are now.
So, I mean, one of the things, like reading all your possible questions for the interview, was like, I don't have a very my path was very unorthodox,
Yeah,
and it's not like the kind of thing that's reproducible necessarily. So all I can do is really share my experience and
yeah,
what I see. Also, like, things are changing so quickly. Like, I
so
don't know if
quickly.
anybody knows
Yeah,
anything about what's going to work in 5 years. Like,
yeah,
who
right,
knows? But
right.
so I just, by sheer dumb luck, I stumbled into CalArts. That article that I read in LA, I happened to be in LA and I read this article about CalArts. And at the time, it was the premier animation school in North America. I feel like there's a lot more animation schools now than there were back then. Really, it was just CalArts and Sheridan, which is in Toronto, and those were the two main schools. But CalArts was really like the marquee name, where all the Disney animators, like Walt Disney, had created that animation program, and all of
Wow,
my
cool.
teachers were like working on Disney movies during the day, or
Wow.
DreamWorks and Warner Brothers, and then they were coming to us to teach classes at night. So like literally, they're like working on the Iron Giant during the day, and then coming to teach us, or working on
Cool.
stuff like Tarzan. So it was super legit, and I just stumbled into it, and I couldn't afford it at all. But then, like, I also just, the state of California at the time had like all this money if you had good grades, and I just, like, I can't even believe it came together, because I had to pay for it all myself. My parents were completely useless. And so I ended up at this school. I ended up at this great school, just by sheer luck. And so it was a great school, and it was an amazing program. And I mean, it was great in some ways, but it was very high stakes, because you could just do nothing. It was so freeform in a lot of ways that you could do nothing and come out with nothing except $100,000 of debt. And there were people who did it, but I worked pretty hard while I was there, and I only went for 3 years. I didn't actually graduate from the program, but the reason for that is because I got hired on SpongeBob after my third year. I just kind of put feelers out. I was like, oh, let's see if I can get a job or not. I had a friend who had left the year before. He only went for 2 years, and he bailed out, and he was working on SpongeBob, and he was like, bring your portfolio over. Maybe this will work out for you. He said, I'll recommend you. And so he walked my portfolio in there. He walked my films in there too, because at CalArts you make short films, animated
Cool.
films. And so he walked it in there, and they loved my film. So the creator of SpongeBob, Steve Hillenburg, I have a drawing of his right here. This is
Awesome.
one of my precious uh,
Wow.
possessions. That's an
Cool.
original Steve Hillenburg pencil drawing. Uh, he just passed away a few years ago, unfortunately, but he was a CalArts guy, so he knew the school. I mean, this is kind of like the way these things go in the industry, but he was a CalArts guy. He liked my film, and they offered me a job working as a storyboard revisionist. And so my options were, I could go back to school for another year and pay another $30,000, and then come out of school and try to get the job they were already offering me. So that's like literally like what I was trying to do. So I was like, they're offering me the job. Like, why am I going back to school?
Yeah.
And it was like, more money than my dad had ever made in his life. So I was just like, I guess I'm gonna bail. So I bailed, and I started on. And by the way, like, SpongeBob it had aired like 3 episodes at that point. Like,
Oh wow.
nobody knew the show at all. It was
Yeah.
like nothing. And
Wow.
I came on. It was like right at the tail end of season one. So I did work on a couple of episodes at the very end of season one. I don't even think I'm credited on those, but then I'm credited all through season two as a revisionist. And then for season 3, I was promoted to storyboard artist, and you'll see my name at the front of some of those episodes, which is really fun. I don't, have you ever seen my
Yeah.
name pop up? Yo, you have,
Absolutely
nice.
have. I have. Absolutely. In
That's
fact, I
fun.
would pause it and tell my kids, like, hey, I grew up with that guy.
Yeah. So yeah, that's always fun. I'm actually even on screen in one episode. I don't know if you know the Band Geeks episode, where it's often considered the best episode of SpongeBob, where SpongeBob sings that Sweet Victory song
Definitely
like
rings
it's like a
yeah.
Super Bowl kind of a thing, and they
Yeah.
cut to a live action crowd that's going like this. I'm actually in the
You're in
crowd.
there.
Yeah, I can show you the clip. It's on my website. I have it circled if people want to see it, but I'm actually like on screen in that
That's funny.
episode. So that's kind of, my students love that when I show it to them. They freak out because they've been seeing that episode since they were little kids, and so I ended up on that show, and that was it. I mean, like, so the kind of like snarky thing that I say is like, how do I recommend starting your career? Get hired on a show that's about to become a global phenomenon. Like
If you
that's what
can
I
do that.
recommend. So I mean, honestly, like, it's been kind of off to the races ever since then. Like, I got on that show, and it's not that I haven't ever had to go looking for work, but it's never been for very long. So that's yeah, that, and I mean, obviously it was a really good show, and so the people I worked with were really good, and they taught me the things that I needed to know to be good, and so like, everybody I worked with on that show, even the like the low level people were like all directors within like 5 years, because
Wow.
like, they hired good people and they trained us well, and everybody had their minds right to get out there and work. So I guess, should I just keep going like through my
Yeah,
career
yeah, yeah,
point? Yeah.
yeah.
So I worked on the first run of SpongeBob, like all the classic seasons. And then they just ended the show like after season 3. Steve Hillenburg was like, I don't want to do the show anymore. He has a quote that I talk about all the time. He said, nothing great can last forever. Only mediocre shows can last forever. And so, like, I mean, it kind of like, if you watch SpongeBob now, like, it is exactly that, it's prophetic. Like, that's what's happened. And I also joke about, like, because I work on American Dad, as you know, but American Dad's gone on for, we're working on our 18th season right now. We're
Oh,
finishing up
yeah.
our 18th season. I know. I've literally been on the show. So my anniversary is coming up. I think it's in October, which, if we don't get picked up, I won't make it to October. My end date for the current season is in July. But if I make it to October, it'll be 20 years for me working on the
Oh,
shows.
yeah.
I know, it's unreal. So not
Yeah.
continuous. I did get laid off once or twice in there for little small stretches, but anyway, but yeah, I mean, I like, kind of jokingly with my students, like, American Dad has lasted 18 years, like, just like Steve said, only a mediocre show can last forever. So like, I'm very proud of American Dad, but I'm like not under any illusions that it's like a great show or anything like that. It's not like an important show, but it's been amazing to work on, an incredible crew. And so I guess, like, just in the continuity, so I worked on SpongeBob, it ended, and then I started doing SpongeBob illustration while it was going on. And so then for the year after it ended, all I did was SpongeBob illustration almost exclusively for a year. So that kind of like launched me into this other side hustle of doing illustration. So, like, here's one of my books that you can find.
Yeah,
These are still like easily available
yeah. I
on
definitely recommend
Amazon,
them. Yeah.
and so these get my headphones pulling here. But the that was cool. Like, that was just a dream of mine to be an illustrator. And so I kind of spun that into, a little side career for a little while. And I mean, that's one of the fun things about doing this kind of a podcast, is that I can guarantee that everybody who's listening to this has seen my artwork before. Like, there's no doubt about it. I mean, if you go on Amazon right now and look at SpongeBob, like the marquee, there's like a pineapple texture in the background that actually, this here, I can show you right now, because I have it as a potential Zoom background. I can just change my background. So this pineapple texture right here, there we go. So that you can see this texture on Amazon for like, I think it's season 3 or something like that, but it shows up all the time. So just stuff like that, that I know people have seen before. So I'll go ahead and turn that back off because it's
You're in the
a little
pineapple.
nuts. Yeah. So there we go. All right. So yeah, I did a lot of SpongeBob illustration, and then I went back. They started making the SpongeBob movie, the first SpongeBob movie, and so they pulled me back in to work on that. And I worked on that for almost a year, and then that finished. And then after that, I went on to American Dad. Like that was my next gig. Oh no, that's not true. What am I saying? There was this whole Looney Tunes period where I worked on that. Man, was that before the movie, or I think it was before? It was after the SpongeBob movie. Yeah, I'm getting old, man. I can't even remember. So yeah, there was this weird. It was when the movie Looney Tunes Back in Action came out. They
Oh,
started making
cool.
some Looney Tunes shorts, and so I worked on some of those, and that was cool. Like drawing Bugs Bunny for a little while,
Wow.
and
Awesome.
that, but that was crazy. It was a very Warner's is a very strange studio, so we boarded 24 episodes of that, and they only ever released like 4 of them. And the rest of
Wow.
them just like they just canned
Huh.
it and it went into boxes in the basement. Probably doesn't exist anywhere anymore, but or it's all like just in boxes somewhere, in a warehouse. All the work we did on that. So, but then after the SpongeBob movie, then I went on to American Dad, and so I started. So my journey on American Dad was pretty wild. They hired me as a storyboard artist because that was my experience. And then they called me a week later before I even started, and they said, "Hey, do you want to be an assistant director?" Because I guess they were just having trouble finding experienced people, and they were like, "Well, this guy's got a good resume." So they promoted me before I had even started on
Wow.
the job. And
Wow.
so then I started as an assistant director, and they paired me up with a director who was like a friend of Seth MacFarlane's or like years ago, but hadn't really directed animation in a long time. He was kind of a timing director, which is an animation specific thing, which probably doesn't mean that much to you, but he hadn't really drawn career wise for like 7 years.
Huh.
And they're like, "Oh, Caleb's pretty strong. Like he'll they'll complement each other."
Yeah.
But what happened was he did his first storyboard, and they were like, "What the hell is this?" And it didn't go at all. And so he
Yeah.
ended up getting fired after his first episode. But that put me in position to kind of help fix it. There were 3 acts for the show, so he did an act, and I did an act, and then one of the storyboard artists did an act, and they hated the other 2 acts, but they liked what I had done, and so they kept me on the show, and I kind of like proved to everybody, I kind of helped them bail out the
Yeah.
boat to fix this
Yeah.
episode. And so that kind of put me on the fast track to being they actually offered me director right after that, but I had just
Wow.
seen this guy flame out, and I had only been on the show for a few months at that point, and I was like, I'm not ready. Don't put me in that position, because I just, I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. I was just kind of
Yeah.
faking it, and it all worked out. But that kind of like put me in everybody at the top of everybody's list. If I had come on to the show with a strong director, like nobody would have known who I was for two
Hmm.
years. But
Yeah.
because I ended up on this show with this guy who just completely shat the bed, I got really lucky, and so suddenly I was in the spotlight. All the supervisors knew who I was. All the writers knew who I was. I was like the guy who saved show 5. And so that's kind of what led to me getting promoted. So when season 2 rolled around, so that was my first episode as an assistant director. They retroactively gave me co-director credit on that episode,
Wow.
just because I had worked so hard on it. And then I was an assistant director for 2 more episodes on season 1 with 2 different directors. And then when season 2 rolled around, they offered it to me again. They're like, "Now, do you want to be a director?" And so I just said, like, I'm stupid if I say no to this again. So and I felt more confident at that point,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that I knew what I was doing. So I got promoted to director on the show, and that just happened so fast. Like I was like,
Sounds like it.
a board artist on the SpongeBob movie, and then like a year later, I was a director on a primetime show. And it was a great fit for me. Like I just like, some of those things, I just took chances on things. I was like, what have I got to lose?
Yeah.
They like just things that only the directors were supposed to do, but there was just nobody else to do it because that guy had gotten fired. And so they're like, "Do you want to take a stab at it?" And I was like, "Sure." And I
Yeah.
did it, and they're like, "Wow, that's really good." So,
Yeah.
like timing the animatic and stuff like that. And I would just try stuff too. I wasn't afraid because I literally I knew I had nothing to lose. Like if I did
Yeah.
it wrong, they're like, "Oh, he's just a kid. He doesn't know what he's doing."
Yeah.
But it all worked out. And so I ended up directing for seasons 2 and 3 on American Dad. So I directed 6 episodes in those seasons, and then the co-director. And so that was a really like exciting time, but it was also like really tough. My first kid was born at the end of season 2,
Yeah.
and then season 3, the way that played out was I would get up in the morning at so I would leave the house at 9 just to avoid traffic, and then get to work by 10. Everybody would show up at 10, and it's entertainment. So but so I'd wake up at like 8 and have breakfast with my wife and my kid, and then I would get in the car and I'd be like, "All right, see you tomorrow." And I
Wow.
would just go to work, and I'd like most nights I was there till midnight, sometimes even later. I'd come home, everybody was asleep. We'd wake up, we'd have breakfast, and then I'd be like, "See you later." And
Wow.
I was often doing that on weekends too. Like sometimes I could work at home on weekends, but not always. And
Yeah.
I'm very perfectionistic. Like I get really absorbed in the work, and like I just can't let it go. And I'm also not super organized either. So that's a terrible combination for work-life balance. But I loved the work was part of the problem. It's like
Right.
I
Yeah.
get really into it, and I'm like
Yeah.
it needs to be a certain way, or I see how this can be good, but the only way to get it there is to do the work.
Yeah.
And so I got really burned out, and so I stepped down after season 3. You're directing on a primetime show. Like the amount of money that I was making was so much more than any money I'd ever made before. I only had the one kid. My wife worked as well, so we had like so much money coming in at that point that I like they would bring you your paycheck at the end of the week, and I was just like, can I just give it back and like take the weekend off? Like I don't care. It doesn't mean anything to me right now. I just like I'm so
Yeah.
burned out. Like I
Yeah.
can't enjoy this at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I was working like 80 plus hours a week, like no
Yeah.
joke. And with like an hour commute, to get
Yeah.
home.
Right.
So I got really burned out, and I just was like, I need to take a step back. Like my family is not happy, and like, do I even have a family? It just
Yeah.
so I ended up going back to a storyboard artist for a while. I was like, if I can storyboard from home, I'll keep working on the show. And they were like, sure, like we love you, like you're great, we know you're good. And so I was just like, I just need a break. So I went back to doing storyboards, and I was working from home, and I did that for like 1.5 storyboards. And then there was a writer strike in 2007, and I got laid off.
Oh, geez.
so, so I was like boom, boom, like here I am a director, and then boom, laid off. They were like, if you were a director, we'd try to keep you on, but you went down to the storyboard. So I just got
Oh,
laid
God.
off, and yeah, and so and that was like 6 months of the show being closed. So that's how I ended up back at Nickelodeon. I worked on Penguins of Madagascar as a storyboard artist for not even a whole season. I was there for like maybe 9 months, something like that. And that was great because it was really challenging. It was a super different style because it's a CG show. The camera work was much more cinematic,
Hmm.
and that was exciting. And I learned a lot from that. And my goal at that, I was like, all right, I want to go into features. Like I want to be a storyboard artist. I want to like people were getting hired off of that show onto things like Kung Fu Panda 2, and another guy got hired at Pixar, and I was like, all right, this is it. This is
Yeah.
my chance to
Yeah.
like this is the pipeline. Like if I do well here and prove myself, then I can leverage this into a feature storyboarding position, because that's where a lot of real storytelling happens. And then my friends lured me back to American Dad. This character design position opened up, and I had always kind of joked that I wanted to do character design. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do character design and take it easy. and they actually called my bluff on it, and had the producer call me and offer me this character design position on American Dad, and I was like, I shouldn't go back. I feels like moving backwards in my career. Do I really want to go back to American Dad? And like, I had this idea of going like up into features. I was like, if you guys let me work at home, I'll do it. And they're like, okay. So they ruined my life, man. They made it too easy for me.
You couldn't
And
say no.
yeah, I couldn't say no. I went back. I mean, it's like all my best friends were on the show at the
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
and I was totally like comfortable with the style. So I went back. Character design is like a really great like work-life balance kind of a job because it's creative, it's fun, you're still involved with the storytelling and the characters, but it doesn't have the crazy deadlines that a lot of the other jobs have. And so suddenly here I found myself, not only did I not have the stress of the deadlines, but I also was working at home, like I was only working at home 2 days a week, I should say, at the time. It started that way. So, and then yeah, so I've literally been on the show ever since. So
Wow.
that was
And
season 4.
what are you
So
doing now for the show?
character design,
Character design.
doing the
Wow.
same thing. Yeah, just coasting, man. Just coasting through on character design, like for this. So this is literally, so that would have been season 4. That was like 2009, something like that. And so I've been
Mhm.
doing character design ever since. So, but I
Wow.
mean, it's relaxed enough that I can do other projects. So I've continued to do illustration work. I've even done freelance storyboarding in there as well. Like I worked on the Neil deGrasse Tyson Cosmos series.
Oh,
They
cool.
did a couple seasons of that,
Yeah.
and they animated a lot of the historical stuff. So I did some of those storyboards and character designs on that as well. So
When you do, well, let me ask you this,
yeah,
because it is hard to replicate a pathway,
yeah,
and yet one of the things that are consistently equal in Hollywood, no matter actor, it sounds like the same for animation. The commonality that I find is there is no straight path. No one has a story
yeah,
that says, if you follow me,
right,
you'll end up here. Everyone has a unique path. And
yes,
yet, what I appreciate are like the coaches and the mentors in our lives that help us with the breadcrumb kind of thing.
yeah,
Would you, to today's audience, and I kind of have a perspective on it too, and it's the question of college. As an
mhm,
animator, there's certainly value, I'm sure, in college for
yeah.
sure. But do you see that as an essential component to becoming an animator?
So essential? No, I don't see it as essential. I mean, obviously, I don't have my degree, so that is like I have a lot of friends who don't have animation degrees. When I was at Cal Arts, it was very common for people to go for a year or two and then bail. And you really kind of get the foundational stuff in the first couple of years, like the main stuff. If you're good, and you kind of get it, then usually that's enough. The amount of the actual like textbook amount of information that you need is not very much. The value of school comes from the inspiration. It comes from like being around other
Yeah,
artists.
for sure.
That is huge. And then also having experienced artists like your professors around to
Yeah,
help you along. It is great and it is valuable. And if you can afford it,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know that I would have made it into animation as as easily as I did without CalArts.
yeah.
Like
Right, right.
because I mean that was my pathway. I feel like I could have fumbled around for a long time, submitted a lot of portfolios, and just never gotten anywhere
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I hadn't gone there. So
Right,
that really primed me. It sort of showed me like what I needed in my portfolio.
right.
But the most important thing, you probably know what I'm going to say, was I had a friend who walked
Yeah,
my portfolio into the studio, and
right.
so I made connections there that were super important and valuable.
Right. That's what I have found
Yeah,
that college is great at are
yeah,
these connections. And it's your peer group,
absolutely,
it's your peer group, or even
absolutely.
professors. And
Professors,
the other
yeah,
thing, it sounds like what it did for you, which I also find is that reel is that when you're young, your intention is to create a reel, but you just get busy with life. But
yeah,
college forces you because
Yes.
it's due, and
Right.
so you're like, dang it, I got to do this freaking thing, and you do it, and you don't even realize that you're setting yourself up. Like that's your resume right there when you're young.
Those deadlines are
Yeah,
so
so
important.
important.
And somebody cracking the whip over you. I mean,
Yeah,
the students that I work with now, I mean, we really put them through the ringer. Like we
yeah,
crack the whip. Like the schedule that they have to make a film on is horrible. Like it's so tight, and it's good for them. Like
yeah,
it's really grueling, and like the trial by fire that they have to go through is so valuable. In some ways, it's maybe even more valuable than the portfolio in the sense that they'll recognize that, like, okay, this is what it feels like. This is what crunch time feels like, and this is normal. Like
yeah,
this to push through. So those deadlines are. I mean, I have I could show you 50 projects right here on my computer that I have started and never finished because I don't have a deadline, and I just fiddle
yeah,
with them, and
yep,
I worry about them, and I think like, what if, and
yeah,
I'll put it aside and pick it up 2 years. Like, I have no deadlines, and I just, I don't get anywhere with
yeah,
it.
yeah. No, I've got folders on my desktop too.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
trying to get them done. That's one of the things this guy talks about is finish what you start. So I'm trying to
right.
make sure I do. I recently did a Kickstarter, so I have to write. I took 5 of my screenplays and I'm turning them into novels.
Oh, wow.
Just
Okay,
another
very
level of
cool.
story. I mean, I have
Yeah,
the screenplays, so you're already like 50% there. And I just thought,
right.
I'll just force myself to, give a deadline. Now I got
Yeah,
the requirement. I've always been curious about this because I don't know what the answer is. I fell in love with directing features out of a love for acting, and I produce and write as a byproduct because no one's like producing my own stuff. So I figured all the AD work even and line producing, and I can do all that because of my love for directing now. But I don't know, when you say director for animation, what
yeah.
does that mean and what does that look like? I mean, sir, you're not out there talking to actors saying, "Hey, man, I
No,
want
no,
you to
no.
do this."
Super different. Yeah.
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah, so it's a really strange kind of the differences between animation and live action are so fascinating to me. A lot of what I teach my students is film school stuff. So it's like
Yeah.
editing, like the storytelling part of it is pretty much the same. Like what ends up on the screen in terms of the storytelling is the same, but the pipeline is completely different. So
Yeah.
as an animation director on a TV show, I mean, it depends on what show you work on, of course, but on American Dad, they give you a schedule. Like, here's your schedule. You've got 3 episodes this season. Here's how they overlap. And so when you're going to get your next script. So they're going to table read it on this day, and then you're going to start it the Monday after with your design launch. And so the way it works is you're just on the schedule,
Wow.
and they just email you a script, and they're like, here's your episode, and you read
Wow.
through it. And sometimes you read through it and you're like, oh man, this is hilarious. This is gonna be so much fun. This chase scene is gonna be fun, and this dinner scene is hilarious, and oh, this is gonna be great. And then every now and then you get an episode, you're like, ooh, what am I
I'm
gonna
not do
do with
this.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh man, is it funny? I don't even know if it's funny yet. And so it's such like a crapshoot, and your job is to just make it work as best you can. And like it's one of those things. Like sometimes people, like, if your episode is a clunker in animatic, like everyone's like, oh man, that one. Like people are like, oh, it's not your fault, just the script needs work. And but then you always feel like people are blaming you for it. But okay, I'm getting off track. So they give you the script. The first stage is design. So you meet with your designers. So maybe you've got a complicated episode, like I did an episode where this Stan's a CIA agent, of course,
Yeah.
and so this Russian guy moves in across the street. This Russian agent that he had a rivalry with in the '80s moves in across the street and is his neighbor now. And so we had these like flashbacks to the Berlin Wall, this like exchange of prisoners and stuff like that. So people always ask, like, it's an established show, like, what do you need to design? Well, we had a flashback to the Berlin Wall in the
Right. Right.
80s, and we got
Yeah.
like you got Russian soldiers you got to design, you got to make everybody look younger. So you got the whatever the setting is has to be designed. And some of this stuff there just isn't reference for. So you just have to kind of make it up. like how would a prisoner exchange would have been done in the 80s between the US and the Russians. Like, we look for reference, and I remember we just didn't find anything. And so we
Yeah.
just we're like, all right, cement walls, barbed wire, like
Yeah.
metal doors and watchtowers, just kind of make it look vaguely military. And so, you got to have all those conversations. Like, what is he wearing? Is he wearing like prison clothes? Is he wearing like his suit and it's all beat up? Like all these questions. It's the 80s. Is his hair going to be different, or is it just
Yeah.
going to be him? Like which one how are we doing this? And so you have to meet with the writers and you have all these discussions about design. So that's the first stage. So you've got a crew of designers. So it'll be the director and their assistant director, and then you've got a crew of like 3 character designers and maybe 4 or 5 background designers and prop designers as well. Like we need Russian rifles from the
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
We need what kind of car would they be driving at that time? All that kind of stuff. So those are the props that have to be designed. And so then you meet with everybody, you kind of talk with the writers about what they have in mind. The design crew goes off and designs it. They do like concepts and they send them to you, and then becomes an approval process. Like, oh, this is good, this one needs work. You send it to I might think it's good, and we send it to the writers and they're like, no, 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 that's no good. So I had something else in mind, and so you go back and forth. And then the next stage is the storyboard phase. And so that's probably like the most important thing that the directors are going to do is the storyboard. Like they are going to get the script to storyboard
Yeah.
fashion.
Okay.
And you know what a storyboard looks like, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I do have some
Yeah.
examples I
You're
can
welcome
show.
to share anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pull some up and just let's see. I have some American Dad. This is actually pretty good sample here. So can I share my screen yet?
Should be able to.
Let's see. Let's do this one here.
I
All
got
right,
it.
you can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so American Dad. All right, this is an episode I did called Dope and Faith, actually, where Roger. You've seen American Dad before, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So
Several.
Roger is the alien that lives with
Yeah.
them, and this is. Let me see if this. All right, so these are my thumbnails from that episode. So here's a script on the right. This crossed out stuff is basically means that we're not working on that right now.
Yeah.
So here we have I don't know if you can see my pointer.
Yeah.
Establish Smith House Day. So there's
Yep.
my thumbnail there. Just a little.
Great. Show the house. I got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as we go through, the script, we've got the dialogues happening here on the left, and I'm just kind of like scribbling out my ideas for the shots. So mostly this is like the thumbnail phase. What kind of a shot is it? Is it a medium shot? Is it a 1
Yeah.
or a 2 shot? Kind of the general composition. Arrows to show characters moving around. This truck arrives and these thugs get out, and camera moves are indicated. So this is like I always love. I don't have a lot of thumbnails from other artists, so I think it's fun for my students to be able to see like how ugly these drawings are at this early stage. But
Yeah.
it's really just kind of figuring it out as quickly as possible.
Right. Exactly.
So you got these camera moves. So this turns into a whole fight scene. It's a really dumb episode. Steve thinks that he's been accepted into Hogwarts, so he's like trying to
Nice.
cast spells, and
Nice.
but we have this fight scene. So these thugs are like beating up Roger, panning over. But one of the cool things about this is that let me find like a moment here. All right, so Roger, we widen out. This guy punches him. He stumbles back to the left, and then this guy punches him, and he goes back the other way. The middle guy punches him, and then this guy hits him with the baseball bat, and then he stumbles forward and falls into the drugs, and then he sits up, and then his eyes dilate. So I can show you. I have the video of it plays out exactly this. Almost this entire sequence plays out just like this
Oh
on
gosh, that's
TV.
awesome.
So yeah, which is really fun to see. Pretty much on American Dad, when you do a good job, that's kind of how it works. So I went right to the exact moment. So it's perfect. So you can see, you won't be able to hear it, but I'll play it. So punch, hits him, punches, hits him. He falls into the drugs, and then zoom in.
Amazing.
So
Yeah,
anyway, all kinds of
that's
madness
awesome.
going on. But so that's the kind of the storyboard process. And so then let's see. This is some storyboards from SpongeBob I can show while we're on the topic just quickly here. So these are from a very famous episode
They look
called
more detailed
this is a finished storyboard. So
okay,
what I showed you
or more
were
thumbnails.
just
You're
the
just getting the
thumbnails.
idea. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
change a lot.
I
Who,
should
who
probably, if I'm doing like a proper presentation, I should have the cleanup version of those too.
who
But
has final say? Is it like the showrunner or
the
the writers?
the showrunners are writers,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
they
So they have the final kind of this is what it should be.
yeah, usually in TV animation. I mean, it depends. It really depends on the show, but primetime sort of American Dad style show, the showrunner is almost always a writer. So like on The Simpsons, for example, like the
Yeah.
writers have the kind of the final
Are the
say.
ones.
All those kind of primetime shows like King of the Hill and stuff like that. Those are definitely. Where's my button here? Trying to I guess I can keep sharing for now. But yeah, so like SpongeBob, the showrunner was an animator. So a lot of like more like daytime shows, like kids
Yeah.
shows, oftentimes the animators are the showrunners.
Okay.
But those primetime shows are very script driven. So, but it
Okay.
does depend on the
Okay.
show. Penguins was much more script. It was more writer driven. So
Hmm.
whoever pitches the show.
Gotcha. Is in the
So
driver's seat.
exactly.
Is Seth
Yeah.
MacFarlane at all involved?
Not he's essentially voice talent now.
Okay.
I think that's true on Family Guy as well. I for sure is on American Dad. So on American Dad, he was involved for just like the first half of season one, and he
Gotcha.
quickly realized. I mean, they never expected that both shows were going to get picked up. Like American Dad was supposed to be a replacement for Family Guy, but then they picked up Family Guy too, and he was
Yeah.
like, "Oh wow!"
That
And
too.
so
Yeah.
he kind of stepped out of American Dad very early on, but he kept working on Family Guy for quite a few years before he kind of retired from that as well. My understanding, which is not at all like keyed in to what's going on in LA, but my understanding is that he's essentially just voice talent on both shows now, and he just lets the writers run the show, and he's kind of involved in
Can I
other.
tell you, I don't know if you remember this, but so years later, after I moved out of LA, I flew back to LA and you were a director at that point on American Dad. And so you invited me out to lunch and come over and see my office. And it was really cool. And so
Right.
we went over and you showed me everything. We walked around, you introduced me, and we went and got a bite. But I didn't know, nobody knew who really Seth MacFarlane was, you know? And we got on the elevator, and as we got off, he was getting on. And you were like, holy cow. You know, like that's Seth MacFarlane. Like I was like, what? I don't even know who that is. But it, now obviously I'm like, holy cow, that's who was getting
Yeah.
the elevator. So
Yeah.
too funny.
Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, I have a voicemail from him. He really liked one of my episodes, and he called and left me a voicemail.
Oh wow,
That I have
that's high
recorded.
praise.
Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah, I play it for my students sometimes if they're nice to me. uh, but yeah, it's a nice souvenir. But hilariously, like I remember I played it this last semester for my students, and I was like, wow, in the era of voice clones, like nobody's even gonna believe this anymore.
True. Yeah,
Like people are
oh,
just
come
gonna
on,
laugh at
dude.
me, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, that's so pathetic, man. But yeah,
You're
it's
trying to
hilarious.
convince them. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Well, this
all right.
SpongeBob one looks good.
Yeah. So definitely. So let's see. I've got my I'll just show you a couple of things I pulled together here. So I guess I should finish out talking about I'm all over the place. American Dad. So we were talking about the storyboards, like what
Yeah.
does a director do? So yeah, I'll just keep talking about that, I guess. Should I hide my screen again? Where's the button to stop sharing?
I think it's down at the bottom.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay. It was actually up high for
Oh.
some reason. Okay. So we do the storyboard, then you do notes on the storyboard. So the writers will like do a pass and make changes, but then you do the animatic. That's the other big thing that you do.
Sure.
Is so the storyboard, they do a radio play. Usually you have the radio play early in the storyboarding process. And so then you combine the radio play with the storyboards, And yeah, for those who don't know, a radio play is just they bring all the actors in and they record all the lines
Is that
that
the
are in the
final
script.
lines that it's
It
going to be?
usually is, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
obviously there's plenty of leeway
Yeah,
to change it
sure.
if they decide
Yeah.
to, but usually it is the final version. So unless something gets
Yeah.
rewritten or so, typically it is. And then so they will put it into animatic. So the director has a lot of leeway there in animatic. You get to time it out yourself and kind of layer things and plus it up if you want in whatever way you can and just make it good. And so when we were in the studio together, then you'd have a big screening of the whole crew. So kind of like a table read. The whole
Yeah.
crew's invited to the table read. Then 3 months down the road, you screen the animatic for the whole crew. And that's very high pressure because your
Sure.
name is on it. And
Yeah.
if it's good, I mean, everybody knows it's a collaboration. But if it's good, then everybody knows you did your job right. Like
Yeah. Right.
it's one of those things. Like you can't really, if you get a bad script, you can't really make it funny.
Yeah.
You can polish it as best you can, but you can't really save a bad script, but you absolutely can ruin a good script if you don't know what you're doing. So it's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people along the way who can ruin the show, and the director is definitely one of those. So if the show's good, everybody knows you did your job, and it's exciting. I mean, I've had good screenings, and you just
You can
feel like
feel the
you're
vibe. Yeah.
flying afterward. Yeah, you're like, all right, everybody thinks I'm good today. Everybody thinks I know what I'm doing, which is a good feeling. So, and just like, I mean, I'm sure you've been through that as well. Like, there's nothing like having a great audience reaction, like people
Oh, of
laughing
course.
at your
Yeah. I mean,
jokes and stuff.
you're
So,
not creating stuff for your own gratification. It is intended to be seen. It is
yes,
intended to elicit emotion. And
exactly.
so you don't need the praise, but you need the audience. That's
Right.
an essential component to it. What about star power within animation? It's funny, like it seems to me from the outside, star power is still very much helps with that. But when you see star power, does that matter in animation?
It depends what you mean. Do you mean animators or the other talent, like the writers and the actors?
Usually like like for instance, Chris Pratt, I think just did Garfield,
Right.
so anybody probably could have, any talented
Yeah.
actor. I say this a lot.
Yeah.
And it's because we grew up with like community theater, so many talented people in the world. Like just go down to your local community theater and you will find some of the best actors
Absolutely.
you've ever seen in your life. And
Yeah.
it's just because they took a different path
Yeah.
and they have such a zealous passion. I
Yeah.
mean, your brother Josh is
Yeah.
a great example. The dude
Yeah.
works a day job, has a family, but is so passionate about story and acting. He's going to act no matter where he's
Right.
at, and just go down to your community theater. So certainly they could have got somebody extremely talented to voice over Garfield, but they went
Yeah.
with Chris Pratt for the
Yeah.
obvious reason of the name pull.
Right.
Do you think that matters, or is that kind of a wrong path, if you will? If
I
you were
mean,
king for a day.
I'm I mean, the sad reality of Hollywood, which I'm sure you know, is that there's just not enough room for all the talented people.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of like the way I think of it is it's like an exclusive party, and you have to once you're in the party, it's way easier to stay in the party than it ever is to get in the party.
Yeah.
And it's like imagine like an exclusive club that you want to get into. You got to line up outside the door with every scrub that wants to get in there, and there's a bunch of bouncers at the front who were told don't let anybody in,
Yeah.
essentially, like at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
And so their job is to keep people out. And so what you need essentially is a friend on the inside to open
Yeah.
the back door for you and let you in the party.
Yeah.
Like that's the easiest way into the party. And the sad thing is, like, a lot of those people in line are just not going to get in. Like there's just
Yeah.
not enough room, and that's one of the reasons why these things happen. It's one of the reasons why like knowing somebody is so important, because I mean, like I got one of my students a job on American Dad,
Oh, awesome.
and so she went to school here in New York, and we had an opening for an apprentice, and I was like, she's really
Wow.
good. Like I helped her get the test and kind of got her name in the pool. And I was like, look, guys, she's gonna be really good. I'm telling you, this kid is good. You should hire her. And I just don't, if she had just thrown her portfolio onto the pile, I don't think she would have stood
Yeah.
out from the crowd enough for them to give her a shot. There's just so many other people, and in fact, she originally didn't get the job. They hired somebody else. It was down to her and this other person who also had a friend. She was like the producer's friend's son or something,
Oh, wow.
and he got the job first, and they didn't give it to her. But then somebody else left, and he got promoted, and so they had another
Got it.
opening, and they ended up pulling her in, and she's done amazing. Like everybody loves
Yeah.
her. Like she's so good. But it's like I don't think she would have shown through without that just little extra push. So
Yeah. It's
it's
that's a great visual. I love the depiction of the party because you're right. You can even go as far as the party has capacity, right?
yeah,
Or the fire
it's
marshal's going to get involved.
exactly
And
exactly
so,
100%. Yeah.
those
Well,
people
and like
on the outside.
I'm under no illusions that I am the best artist who could have my job, who wants my job. Like out there in the world, there are probably hundreds of people who are better than me, who who have a day job,
Yeah.
and would kill to have the job that I have. And it's like there is no real justice in that way,
Yeah.
like the people who have the jobs, there's no like correct person for the job. It's
Yeah.
the person who was available on the day. And normally there's like 20 people who could do the job. And how do we pick them? Well, this
Yeah.
one's Todd's friend right here.
Yeah.
Todd, this is Todd's
Exactly.
best friend. Like, all
Yeah.
right, well, let's pick him. Like you
Yeah.
literally like that's how it happens. Cause there's like, well, all these people are good. How are we gonna pick them? And it's like, well, we got all these amazing voice actors, but Chris Pratt wants to do it too. So like, who do we give it to? Like, I mean, it's just like
I
it's
think
such
we're
a
going with
no-brainer
Chris.
for
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and one of the questions on your list that stood out to me was like, how is Hollywood screwing it up? I think something like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
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 How is Hollywood screwing up? And the thing is, like, when I saw that question, I'm like, Hollywood's just doing Hollywood. Like,
Yeah.
it's always been this way to some degree. They are not artists, they are business people. And you have like this Steven Zaslav at Discovery, who's just kind of the butcher right now of all
Yeah.
these projects. And like you get the feeling that he has no interest in storytelling at all, or movies or anything like that. Like he's looking at spreadsheets. I don't know this for sure, this is just
Yeah.
what it
Right.
feels like
Perception. Yeah.
as an artist, that this is a guy, he's like looking at spreadsheets and
Yeah.
and graphs and stuff like that. And
Right.
he's like, oh, so if we can this, we can cash it out for this. He's like chopping up cars for parts right now.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, the car is worth this much if we sell it used, but if we chop it up for parts, it's worth 20% more. Like, why wouldn't we do that? And there's no love for the art forms or anything like that.
No, it's and he's not the only one for sure. I mean, we can go down the list, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
People.
He's just
Yeah.
in the
He,
headlines right now. But
he is. No,
but
he is. And
that's what
yeah,
Hollywood is. They're about making money.
they
That's
are.
that's all
Yeah.
they do. These are business people. They do not think like artists, and they never have. Is the thing. I mean, there are exceptions. Like Walt Disney was an artist, and I think one of the things that made him a remarkable executive was that he had a love of storytelling, and
Yeah.
he loved movies, and he loved just experiences, creating experience. Disneyland is an
Oh,
incredible storytelling experience,
exactly.
and it's because he saw the possibility and wanted to make it. And his philosophy, which we don't have in Hollywood right now, his philosophy was, well, if we make it good, we'll figure out how to make money on it later. Like, but first make it good. Like that was the way that he approached things. And then he would hand it off to Roy, and he'd be like, how are we going to make money on this, Roy? And Roy would like try to like, create all this cross pollination. I'm sure that's extremely reductive, but really he a lot of these things, like he completely uh mortgaged the whole company like several times in
Yeah.
order to get these
Yeah.
things made. Like Snow White, and I think Cinderella. There were like a few of these movies where he was just like, no, 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 like we just have to make it good, guys. That's the most
Yeah.
important thing. Like if we don't make it good, like what are we even doing here? And so
Yeah.
he would make this amazing thing, and they built the company on that. And now that's not what Disney does anymore as a company. They are way too safe, and they won't do anything that's not going to make money next year. The investors, if we try to, like, we can't mortgage the whole company, or the investors will abandon us, you know?
Yeah.
We can't make these investments. So you just have like way too many managers, and they're all scared for their jobs, and
Terrified. Yeah.
they're
How can you
all
not
like
be?
making
Yeah.
like little wiggly notes on things, and
Yep.
so you get these like milk toasty projects that are coming out that don't have any strong, I think it's to the point where a lot of the really great creatives just don't want to work with Disney right now, because they can see that the
Yeah.
company is not functioning as sort of a
It's
place
not
for
optimal.
creatives.
That's for
Yeah.
sure. No,
Yeah,
it's not, that's
exactly.
not the days of our youth or what it
Yeah.
was built on. Do people, you talked about some of your side projects that you have that you're kind of working on. Do people come to you for projects outside of different things? And if so, how do people present you with stuff and what gets you excited about a project?
I wouldn't say people come to me with projects too much. I most of what I get offered for side gigs is illustration work.
Illustration?
I do occasionally get approached about a pilot or something like that. Like
Yeah.
I'll do some character designs for a pilot, but mostly it's sort of friends or friends of friends that are bringing me stuff. I'm not high profile enough that people are just like, showing up and asking me for stuff. But I do get approached for the books and things, illustration wise. But I don't. Yeah, in terms of, I don't know, animation is very expensive. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of indie animation out there
I
right
know
now.
I've priced it and it
Yeah,
is, yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy. It
it
is
is
crazy. I
crazy.
mean, and that's
Yeah,
without the voiceover talent, and that's
yeah,
just the animation
exactly.
alone
Yeah,
um it was
it
eye-opening.
it's
And so
prohibitive. Yeah,
yeah,
and also like okay, that's the budget. If you can find the talent who can
yeah,
actually do it,
do that. Yeah.
and so that is one of the things that makes it so challenging. So yeah,
Although it's interesting, like I just read something a couple days ago, like Netflix is doubling down on animation. Like
I hope that's true. It doesn't feel like it right now,
No,
but
I'm sure it seems thin.
yeah, I hope
But
so. Yeah.
have you seen Arcane? It's the
Oh
League of Legends.
yeah,
Oh my gosh,
it's
dude.
ridiculous.
It's a French
But
company.
yes,
Yeah.
but
And
that's the thing. That they made that with that same philosophy that Walt Disney used. Their philosophy was, we want to make this thing,
yeah,
and if we're gonna do it, we're gonna make it as good as we can make it. And they like, I doubt that they're in the black on that project. Like
right.
but
I agree. Yeah.
they're playing the long game, because I don't know if you know this, but it's based on League of Legends.
Yes.
They're coming out with an MMO in what, 5 years or something like that.
Okay. Interesting.
And so I think it's an investment in the IP.
I
And
see.
they're like, well, like this will, it just makes people want to play our games and live in our world.
Right.
So I think that's the game that they're playing. It's like, it doesn't matter if we lose money on this. If people, like, we can monetize it in 1,000 different ways if people love it. And man, do
Exactly.
people love that show.
Oh my gosh,
I'm
dude.
so excited for season
I
2.
mean, I have to say that including live action, that is my favorite show of all time. And it totally
Breathtaking.
hit me out of
Yeah.
left field because
Yes.
I like League of Legends. I played it, but I wasn't geeked out about it. And
Yeah.
then I was like, man, the show's because the game had no real story format that I knew of, although it
Yeah.
did, but I didn't know it at the time. And I was like, this isn't going to make sense. There's all these crazy characters. How are they going
Yeah.
to make it flow? And the writing alone
Yeah.
is like premier, the best.
Breathtaking.
And then the
Breathtaking.
animation, every still is, I could frame
Yes.
it and put it on my wall.
Yes.
I think I remember reading that these guys
Ridiculous.
took, it was either 3 to 5 years, which is way longer than what it should
Yeah.
have. But like to your point, they were getting it not just good enough, they were getting it
Right.
great, and they
Right.
wanted to prove it. They said the second year it's going to be a lot quicker for them
Yeah.
to do. But at the time, if you look at the style, it's not like you've seen. I mean, it is
Right.
unique.
Yes.
It is
Completely.
unique
Yeah.
and just completely freaking blew me away.
Yeah. It's
Um,
ridiculous.
you've been in the game a long time now. And I like to ask this question because to me, it's about the journey. It's about the pursuit. It's not really the destination. I'm always a little leery of. how would you say one finds longevity in the industry and one finds contentment in the industry?
Man. Uh, just be lucky, I guess. I mean, so luck is a tricky thing. Like I feel like I've been incredibly lucky in I've had just like ridiculously lucky breaks, but I was ready for them. And you
Yeah,
get ready by working hard, and you get to know yourself by working hard. So
yeah,
there is like this relationship, like there's a proportional relationship to the amount of work that you put in and the amount of luck that you will have. So the harder you work, the luckier you will be.
I
I
like that.
think. I
Yeah,
think.
I think so too.
I
Yeah,
believe that. I don't think there's. I certainly don't think there's any road to longevity that doesn't include hard work.
yeah, right,
um,
exactly, right.
so, I mean, it's you have to recognize that it's very tricky to get in, and you have to have the confidence in your own ability. I mean, like it's so funny. I'm sure you experienced the same thing in my 20s. I was so confident, man. I was so cocky. I was like, I would see stuff and I'd be like, I can do that. And so I would just stick myself right in the middle of a situation. Like illustration, for example. I got offered a SpongeBob. They were like, "Hey, can you?" I had done like a little bit of illustration and for them, and a little bit of stuff on the side. And they were like, "Could you illustrate a children's book, a SpongeBob book?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then I was like, "All right, the covers, covers do this day." I did the sketches. Sketches were no problem, but then I had to start painting it, and I was like, "Oh crap! Like I might be in a little over my head here." And it was that project ended up falling through, and I think I dodged a bullet because I don't think I was quite ready for it yet.
Huh.
But they ended up canceling it after I did the cover, and I just kept working on my style a little bit and making sure because at the time I was still painting with actual paint, and
Wow.
so there was like just technical stuff that I wasn't ready to manage, like the buildup of layers and stuff like that I needed to practice.
Yeah.
And so I got up to speed, and then I was able to you know the next time it came up, I was able to capitalize, and I was ready for it. But having that confidence that you'll figure it out, and just going for it. And I guess failure is a really important part of the process. Like
Yes.
it's not just that you can't be afraid to fail. Like you have to fail. You
Yeah.
cannot move forward without failing. If you're not failing, then you're not growing, you're not getting better. If you're
Right.
like, oh, that was perfect and beautiful and everything worked out great, then you are in your comfort zone and you're not
Yeah.
progressing. And
No.
so like failure is the way forward. So that's a really I think a challenging one for young people to embrace that struggle. It's like if you're doing good work, if you're doing exciting work that people are going to be interested in, you're never going to stop failing. You will continue to fail
Yeah.
straight through at the highest levels of your career.
Yeah. No,
You will keep failing.
funny enough, I set my kids down once a month and just talk about life lessons or whatever it is, just for like an hour. And one of those sessions was about failing and the importance of failure,
Yeah,
because it does show that you're moving forward and you can't
right.
be afraid to fail. And I think that's what we're inherently afraid of, is to fail, put ourselves out there. But all the people that do,
Yeah,
in order to be someplace or do something, you have to risk.
right.
And it's in the failure, like you said, that you learn.
Yeah,
You'll know more information than you do yesterday,
yeah,
if you fail. If you succeed, your exponential growth is extremely minimal.
right.
It's minimal. But if you fail, you are going to learn lessons
Yes.
in that. You don't live in LA anymore. How does it work now, not living in LA? There's a lot of, since COVID, work from home.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Has the landscape changed that way? Do you have to live in LA still?
You don't have to live in LA. I mean, so I moved here in 2012, so well before COVID, and I was working full time, like all the full time from home, basically for that from like 2012, like all the way up until COVID, and then now everybody's working from home. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's one of the things. Animation. So that was kind of like a silver lining for animation during the pandemic, is that live action shut down. Animation, everybody just went home and kept working. Like, and
Yeah.
it,
Right.
like we barely missed like a
Right.
week even. Like everybody just had to like get the computers home and make sure their internet was
Right.
fast enough, and like boom,
Right.
we were off to the races. So now it's this whole discussion of like, do we bring people back? And people are like, if you bring me back, I'm quitting.
I'm out. Yeah.
Yeah, people, there's just too much work out there, work from home. People are getting used to it and like it, they like it. And for animation, it really works well. So
Yeah.
I did it before it was cool. I'm a hipster for work at home. And so yeah, the hilarious thing about that is we tried to do remote meetings when I was here. There's another guy who has the same job that I have on the show who lives in he moved away the same time I did. He moved to uh, Michigan. But so we tried to have some meetings remotely, but back then it would be like everybody be sitting around the table, the conference table, and then they'd put a computer at the end of the table, and I'd be like on the computer. But like it just didn't work at all because you
Yeah.
can't hear the meeting, you
Yeah.
can't see what everybody's
Yeah.
talking about. So we tried
No.
it a couple times, and they're like, "This is stupid." So
Yeah.
we just stopped doing it. So I didn't go to even meetings for like
Wow.
7 years. And
Wow.
then the pandemic hit, and they're like, "Hey, you can go to meetings again."
Yeah. It's
And I
this
was
thing
like,
called
"Oh,
Zoom.
oh
Yeah.
no!" So after escaping meetings for 7 years, suddenly I had to go to meetings again. So now I have to go to meetings.
Yeah. Nice.
It's cool. I mean, it's actually better because I'm more connected to people now. Like I get to go to the table reads because they do those on Zoom, and
That's cool.
yeah, it's really fun. So we're facing our end of season right now. So this is we're my end date is in July 23rd or something like that. So
So
I've got
what if
like
it
6 weeks.
didn't get picked up? Do you have what's next for you? Do you know what might be next?
Yeah, I think if we don't get picked up this summer, I think I'm going full time at school, honestly. Now that wouldn't mean the end of my career, but
Yeah. Right.
the industry is in a bad place right now
It's
since
been
the
a challenge.
strike.
It's been a
It's
challenge.
it's rough. Yeah, I mean
It's
that's what
rough.
you said that about Netflix doubling down on animation. Like, I hope so because production is way down,
Way
and
down.
part of it is because
Yeah.
Netflix. I mean, the streaming wars have been really weird. Like, there was a
Yeah.
huge surge. I mean, pre-pandemic was like the greatest time ever in animation, and
Yeah.
then everything shut down, and then the writer's strike, and it's pretty bleak right now. There's a lot of friends who are struggling in LA in animation. So
Mhm.
but I've been teaching as an adjunct now for 10 years
Oh, wow.
in the animation program locally at Damon University, and I love it. I really love it. I love teaching. A lot of my creative energy goes into that, actually. And I've had an offer like to teach full time on the table for years now, where they're like, "You just let us know, and
Yeah.
you're in."
Cool.
So I might pull the trigger on that. I'm getting older, and the idea of like going out there and self promoting and trying to like grind up another studio job, like it's pretty sketchy. Ageism is real in Hollywood, in animation. It's better than it used to be. When I came in, oh man, like Steve Hillenburg, when I started on SpongeBob, I think he was 41. This would have been like late 1999, early 2000. And so he was like 41, and he was like the oldest person in animation that I knew of.
Yeah.
Everybody was in their 20s, like a few people in their it was like such a young person's game.
Yeah.
And it's gotten a lot better now. There's a lot of older geezers like me. I'll be 51 this summer, as you know very well.
Yes. Yes.
But you know, it's getting to be a younger, like more and more the people who are doing the hiring are like younger, or like people in their 30s,
Yeah.
like
Right.
this is
Right.
some line producer or something like that, and they're just like they like grew up watching SpongeBob, so I seem like an old grizzled veteran to them, even though I feel like I'm still about 15. But
Yeah. Of course
uh
we do.
yeah, but yeah, it is funny. Like, and I just, I feel like transitioning. I don't know how long this teaching offer will be around if I pass on it again. So if the show doesn't get picked up, I probably will go full time at school, and then I'll keep doing freelance.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
cool thing is I'll have summers off.
yeah.
For teaching. That'll be a great window
To do
for
stuff.
I
Yeah,
can do books, I can do storyboards.
yeah,
I can jump onto a show and help a friend out or something like that. So
yeah.
if it's comfortable, maybe even work on
Well,
something of my own. But
yeah, a lot of options.
yeah.
I will say just a quick caveat to the Netflix thing. 2 days before that, reading that article, I will say that they were talking about doing more international production as well.
Okay,
So maybe the
okay.
two
There
tie
you
in.
go. There you go.
There you
Yeah.
go. Is
That's
that
there's a lot of
Arcane?
that happening.
There's
There's
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
that
that stuff
happening.
happening. A
I
lot,
know.
even like Disney's shipping stuff. They just opened a new
Yeah.
studio in I think Vancouver
Right.
for
Right.
TV stuff.
Yeah.
It's scary. I mean honestly, like I'm surprised LA Animation has kind of stuck
Check it
around as
out.
long as it
Yeah.
has. Like I thought 10 years ago it was going to start like
Going
going
everywhere.
global.
I would have
Yeah.
thought so too. What,
Yeah.
just real curious, because I know we are winding down, but what is your pipeline? Like, do you guys have a I'm sure you do, where you like upload into like one central kind of hub? I mean, certainly it's
Yeah.
probably not Dropbox, but there's something that you
It's box.com.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I literally just
Upload they
download and upload. Yeah.
yep.
They send me
Yep.
stuff, they send me scripts and reference, and I just download and upload. We use Slack. I'm pretty much
Yeah.
like Slack
Everybody
and
uses Slack,
Box.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll have, so, I'll meet with directors through Slack, video or Zoom sometimes as
Yeah.
well. We'll have design launches on Zoom. So yeah, it's just all sitting here, right here at this spot. This is my
This-
drawing tablet right here
oh,
that I work
awesome.
on. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's cool. Do you have your own website? How any
I do. Yeah, let me drop that into chat for you,
and then I'll
so that
make
you
sure
can
I posted in the notes too.
now. And the funny thing is, like, I've been so stable in my career that I have not really focused on self promotion as much as I would have needed to if make sure this works because it's like in admin mode. Uh, yeah, so it really is just sort of like all my work just kind of thrown up there. There's all kinds of stuff up there. Maybe check that link and make sure that works.
Yeah,
Uh,
cool.
but it's got illustration work and storyboards and short films. Even got one of my student films up there. All kinds of stuff, so people can snoop around there. But if I had to go back to work and create like a proper portfolio now, I probably would do a separate one for storyboarding and a separate one for character design. They don't like these.
Oh, really?
The industry
Yeah.
doesn't like this like
Yeah.
catch-all kind of
You kind of do
portfolio.
it all. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this is just like just to have something to show people if people
Yeah.
want to see it.
If you it on American Dad, when you say like character design development, I'm assuming you're not doing like the main characters. Are you doing pretty much everybody?
Constantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me we need like 2 more hours, man. So let me show you. Some of this is on my website actually. So all right. We're sharing again?
Yep.
Okay. So if you go to characters here, so this is like my American Dad stuff. This is right on my website. So
Oh, it's
um
perfect. Yeah.
yeah, so you can see like here's Roger like translucent. I didn't do the color, but this is such a fun design. But
Yeah.
so here we have Stan. This is
Oh
the
yeah,
dad,
perfect. Yeah.
and he's in the Himalayas, or he's in doing a toga party, or we have him from the 90s. He's at an Indian wedding. So like we're constantly doing redresses of the main characters. This is a lineup of ugly British girls. So zoo animals. So here's the mom, Francine. So yeah, we any redresses for the main characters. That's a huge part of my job. Is
Okay.
here I have down here. This is my Roger. So Roger redresses are like kind of our bread and butter. So
Yeah.
I design a new Roger like every week practically, if not more. So these are
That's
like all
funny.
his different personas you can see. So and then like okay, you'll have this character but he's through the episode and at one point he gets like run over by a truck. So what does he look like with this outfit, but run over by a truck, or sunburned or something like
Yeah,
that. So it's like every single variation that appears on screen, I'll do those designs. So it's it's a
that's
weird
hilarious.
it's a weird job, man.
That's funny.
It's pretty great. I think the most famous one is, I don't know if you know who Ricky Spanish is. He's right here at the, I think he's, no, I thought he was at the end. I guess not. Nope, sorry.
That was great.
Anyway,
How do
so
you
that's on my
guys,
website.
how do you
Yep.
guys do? I'm sure you guys have like a, um, whoever the first illustrator was that kind of set the standard for this, and then you all have to mimic and mock off that. And I guess you just get really good about kind of, drawing from the original perspective, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we have model sheets, so we got turnarounds of the characters. Here, this is some of the stuff I have to share
Because
with
it looks
you.
like one seamless, as it should, one
Yeah,
seamless animator,
you'd be
doing
surprised.
everything.
Like one of the things I loved about SpongeBob was you could
Uh,
always tell who drew the different characters. This
oh,
was
really?
a We did this as a puzzle for when we did 300 episodes. We're at like
That's great.
375 or something now, but this is just little snippets from all the stuff we did. I didn't draw everything here, but I did put the collage together for them. So
Oh, that's
but
awesome.
yeah, it's pretty fun. But yeah, so SpongeBob, I mean, it's something that most people wouldn't notice, but
Yeah,
we
but
could
you
we could
guys,
always
yeah,
tell, everybody had their own way of drawing SpongeBob,
yeah.
and so it was always fun to see the different versions. So this is the kind of stuff I do besides the main characters. So this is from this Family Land episode where there was this massacre at this theme park, and so these are appear very small on screen. They're like
Yeah.
on security monitors in the
Okay.
background, but there's like dozens of them. Like I had to do all
Yeah.
these dead people. So, just like you never can predict what's going to come across your desk on a show like this. So just
Yeah. And
crazy
someone
stuff.
else is doing like the background, right? You're just doing the characters.
Yes, yeah. Oh no, that's not the one. Okay, this is some like miscellaneous stuff I've had to do over the years. So
Wow, that's beautiful.
thanks. Yeah, so this was like a Guy Fieri as a Greek god. And we have to do these, sometimes we do off style stuff, children's book illustrations. Uh, so this like 1950s illustration.
Yeah, that's great.
So all kinds of stuff. Oh, this was a poster I did for Comic-Con a couple years ago, 2022. So
Oh, cool.
try to make it look like a comic book. So
Yeah, that turned out great.
anyway, I could keep going, but do we need to cut it short? Are we done?
No, totally up to you, man. Totally up to
Okay.
you, brother. If you want to show, I'm here to
All
learn
right.
and watch and listen.
All right. We'll just show a few SpongeBob curiosities. This is kind of fun. I did this for a how to animate SpongeBob bug. This is a little animation I did of SpongeBob. It's not fully in between, but that's kind of fun to see actual
Yeah,
animation. I don't have a ton of that
yeah,
to show, but and then all right, here's some of my SpongeBob illustrations. So this is this is a kind of one of the marquee images that shows up a lot when they promote the show. But I
yeah.
did the pose here. I didn't do the background. This was done by the
Okay.
art director, but I did the pose here. There's actually a famous fashion designer, Marc Jacobs, I think his name is, who has it tattooed on his
Oh,
shoulder,
wow.
which is hilarious. So here's that
Wow.
pineapple texture, and you can
Yeah.
usually see this on Amazon. This pops up, but there's that pineapple texture I painted like 20 years ago, and they
Holy
still
cow.
they still use it. Only got paid once, of course,
Of course.
and they use it. They still use it, but oh, there it is. So here's a lot of the like stuff that I know people see. They've used this for like t-shirts and
Yeah.
whatnot over the
Yeah.
years, and so I didn't always do the cleanup version of these, but these are the kind of the sketches. So there's a lot of pretty famous ones here that have been used in all sorts of stuff. I did a bunch of SpongeBob comic book covers when that was a thing, which was always a lot of fun.
Oh,
Some comic pages,
wow.
just coloring books and illustrations. tried to play with this drop. This was a fun one. They wanted it to be like a Frank Frazetta style.
Nice.
So that was fun. This is one of my golden books. And this is some pages from inside. So this is fun. Like, dude, I really enjoy working in this style, this kind of old 1950s picture book
Yeah.
style. So, and I still do some of this stuff. I just finished some SpongeBob illustrations last week for a project that'll be coming out soon. So I still
Wow.
occasionally do get these things coming across my desk. And then the
That's
other
awesome.
thing is just the other illustrations. So the Star Wars books, you've probably seen these.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I got to do the Force Awakens when it first came out, and then I got to do this one as well, the A New Hope. They did
Awesome.
this as a book, so these are really
Yeah, those are great.
fun stuff. Man, you want to talk about like surreal feeling is like doing these drawings,
Yeah.
like being the artist that got picked to do Chewbacca in a little golden book style. Like,
Yeah.
holy cow, like what a crazy feeling that was. Like just
Yep. That is
like
definitely
what
our youth right
yeah,
there.
could I have possibly, I mean, like something like this, like could I
Yeah.
possibly have imagined like getting picked to do an illustration like this when I was a kid? Like
Yeah.
this crazy. So
No, that's awesome.
this one I was supposed to do. That's another story for another day. We had a little bit of a scheduling snafu on that one, but that's just a
Uh,
horror story I'll share with you another time. This is some other fun. Did some dinosaur train illustrations, and then I think
one of your little ones, probably not so little anymore, love dinosaurs, if I recall, right?
oh yeah, he was obsessed. So this is a little bit more like my personal stuff, just drawing like for fun. I have a weird sense of humor, as you can see, but yeah, just
Oh,
this
that's
is a
cool.
little more cinematic, kind of a fun.
Yeah.
This was for a card game that never came out. Did some rock and roll dudes. This
Yeah.
were fun.
Those are great. That's also part of our youth.
Yeah, some comics. Oh, this is great fun. This is another board game. So this is kind of this game was called Body Rot when I worked on it. And maybe the name changed, but brace yourself because it gets a little gruesome. So the idea is he gets progressively more diseased. So first he gets like a rash, and then he starts to get sores, and then it's just like
Uh-oh,
fully
no
like
good.
gangrene,
He's not gonna make it.
and then we go full skeleton. So anyway, it's been a fun ride. So
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And now you're teaching it.
now I'm teaching it. Yeah, absolutely. So
Well, cool, brother. Any other if you kind of final remarks, you have animators out there, dreaming big, storytellers dreaming big out there. Anything,
yeah,
any parting words?
yeah, I do actually. So it's a weird time right now. I mean, I'm telling my students this right now. We got students who just graduated, and like I don't know what to say. Like it's rough out there.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
the AI is like a huge new wild card that nobody knows
very
what
true.
it's going to do.
Exactly.
It's already taking work away from a lot of people. But I would say that the I mean, if your goal is just to get out there and make money and you want to sell out in the industry as quickly as possible, this is not going to be a good time for you, probably. I would say animation's not the path to that. It's not the path to riches, if
Yeah,
that's what you thought. But in terms of like fulfillment and excitement and sort of storytelling satisfaction, there's a lot of magic there. And I don't think like whatever AI is going to do, I don't think it's going to capture that
yeah,
magic.
yeah. I don't
It
know.
might try to steal it from you, but it's not going to be able to create the magic. So
Yeah,
we make the music, and the AI rips it off. So just keep making music,
yeah,
essentially, and do what humans do, which is tell stories. Like if your goal is to reach people and to put your stories into the world, people want your stories. I
yeah,
promise you, if you can find a way to get them out in the world, people have an insatiable hunger for that.
yeah,
So don't give up on your stories. And if your goal is to tell stories and have a great life through animation or being an artist or cinema, or filmmaking, just some kind of, I think storytelling is where you're going to find that. And again, like riches are going to come and go, and I can't guarantee that that's coming if you go into this field, but I can guarantee that you won't regret it in terms of just the satisfaction that comes from using your voice in the world. So I think that I was a lot more worried about AI when I first heard about it. And if you go in there and play with the tools a little bit, like try to get something specific.
Yeah.
Try to get exactly what you're looking for. You got this
You're
idea in your
not.
mind. I'm
Yeah.
going to see if I can produce this.
Yeah.
You get in there and you start playing with the prompts, and you're going to come up with some images that kind of seem slick and cool, but it's nothing like what you had in mind.
Yeah.
And like you try to get it closer and try to get it closer, and it's like it's like such the idea that you're going to be able, I mean, there are going to be systems out there that if they hire a bunch of artists to create a bunch of artwork, and then they can train their AI on that artwork, and then they might be able to get something specific out of it. It's like, here's the character design, but it's not able to create yet. And I mean, if you want to feel better about AI, try to get AI to write a joke for you and tell me
Right.
how that works out. That will make you feel a lot better about what AI is capable of doing. So,
Yeah.
and also the only thing that AI can do is copy what has gone before.
Exactly.
It's not going to create something new.
Right.
And that's what people want. People want the new stuff. They want
Exactly.
they want the sincere stuff that's coming out of experiences that we're having now, not experiences that happened 15 years ago that it's copying from the web. It's scraping,
Yeah.
all it can do is scrape the past and then
Yeah.
regurgitate it. It doesn't know what's going inside of you right now. So worry about that. Worry about being sincere and reaching people. And I promise you that AI can't do it as well as you can
Yeah.
ever. I don't believe it. So
No, I believe that it can potentially, we can get it to a point where it could create something, but it'll be
maybe
soulless
someday,
and
maybe someday.
lifeless. It
Yeah,
won't have a soul. It won't have a
right.
life. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
there'll be something off,
Mhm.
and it won't be original. It won't be unique like that,
Yep.
So I completely agree. Well, brother, it's been awesome talking to you. It definitely, a blast from the past. We go back a long way. Probably my oldest friend in
I
existence,
was thinking about
guy
that
right
too.
here.
No
Yep.
question about it.
Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah.
I'm not in touch with anybody in my life
Yeah.
that I've been around other than family members. It's
Right.
you, man. You're my
Yeah.
oldest friend. So
Yeah. No, same. Which is crazy to think about because,
it
as you
is.
said, I mean, I've already beat you to it. We're 51.
That's
You'll,
right.
you'll be there soon. So it's crazy to think about, but I also think it's important. It's important to, and friendships matter. You're not doing life as a solo sport. You do need people, other collaborators, other people to kind of spur you along. And you need champions that are going before you. And that's what a good friend can do. So I appreciate everybody watching, listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that stuff. Leave a comment. So if God knows, Caleb and I know somebody's out there and listening and has some thoughts. It does help the channel. But I believe we're good to go to conclude our discussion with Caleb. I appreciate him coming on. And until next time, keep on swinging.